Like they say, an attacker has to be right once, but you have to be right every single time.
Every
So you
single time.
always have to be on top of what's happening in the field. What are the new bugs? What are the new vulnerabilities? What are like attackers doing? What are different countries trying to do to get into your company? So you always have to keep yourself updated. There is not if you slack for like let's say 2 months where you're not
Mhm.
reading up on what's happening and
Yeah.
what the world is doing, then you're going to lose your advantage of, or you're going to lose whatever knowledge you've built the last few
Mhm.
years.
Welcome to Product Unfiltered. Today we have the pleasure of introducing our guest, Shraddha Patil, who brings a wealth of experience in product management and technology consulting to the table. Shraddha is currently the Director of Product Management at Palo Alto Networks, a leading cybersecurity company. Prior to her role at Palo Alto Networks, she served as a Senior Product Manager at Salesforce, where she led the development of innovative cybersecurity products. Shraddha's expertise extends beyond product management as she has also worked as a consultant at renowned firms such as Deloitte and Accenture. Her diverse background and hands-on experience in multiple facets of the tech industry give her a unique perspective on solving complex challenges and driving product strategy. We are thrilled to have Shraddha join us today to share her insights, experiences, and expertise in the cybersecurity and the product management domain. Thank you so much, Shraddha, for taking out the time for Product Unfiltered.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And thanks a lot for making time on a weekend to talk to me. Thank you.
Yeah. And Shraddha, before we dive deep into our podcast, which will be focused on cybersecurity and product management, would love to hear your journey transitioning into product management and cybersecurity.
Uh, it's a funny story actually. Okay, so I was working at Deloitte when a lot of my mentors and managers kept telling me you should try product management. I had no clue what product management was, but then so many people, right, like who were like 5 or 6 levels above me, had 20 years of experience, were telling me you should try product management. So I bought a ticket to San Francisco for the first Women in Product conference, and I remember I had like $1,200 in my account, and I spent all of it to come to this conference just to check out what it meant. So I came to this
Wow.
conference. I met like a whole bunch of women who were in product management already, and I still am friends with a few of them. And I heard a few talks, and I'm like, oh, this sounds really cool. These people are cool. Maybe I should come and work for product management. So I took all that information away, went back to Chicago, started working back at Deloitte, and it was in the back of my mind, but never really worked on it, right? And it was like, what should I do to be a product management? And then I got a few interviews. I applied for a few jobs and I had no clue. Like I tanked those interviews real bad because I didn't know the lingo, right? I didn't
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
MVP was. I didn't know how to speak the product management language. And so one of my interviews actually emailed me back saying, hey, I really enjoyed talking to you, but you really need to build your product management experience. Like learn the words, learn the language, learn the concepts, all the three P's and four C's and everything. And
Mhm.
that will help you. So that's where my product management journey started. So I bought like 15 or 16 books, and every day after work, I used to sit and read those books. There weren't these podcasts, there weren't like newsletters and anything at that point. This was probably 2016 or 17. So product management was still a newer field, or
Yeah.
maybe I don't know. So started reading books and tried to learn more about what product management is. And that is like how my indirect journey into
Mhm.
product management started. And then, even though I wasn't a product manager, every project that I was in at Deloitte, I started looking at it from a product management perspective. Okay, so what is our MVP going to be? What are our features? How
Yeah.
are you going to tackle this? And that helped me indirectly become a product manager before I actually changed my roles to product management.
Mhm.
That's
So,
that's really exciting. It's very unusual that you are in one industry and a conference actually changes the way you see any role or industry. So that's really exciting. And Shraddha, what about getting into cybersecurity? We know that you worked with Deloitte as a consultant, then you transitioned into product management. But cybersecurity is not a very conventional field, in which you have experience way before getting into it. So how was that transition for you?
if you keep asking me such questions, no one's going to listen to your podcast because mine are all like really random stories. So I got cybersecurity right out of grad school. So Deloitte was interviewing for audit, accounting, and cybersecurity. And all my education is accounting. I literally took me 4 degrees in accounting to figure out that I absolutely hate accounting and it's not for me. So they wanted to hire me for audit, I think like technology audit or something like that. And I went to the partner, and I actually need to reach out to him and thank him for taking a chance on me. So I was like, hey, I don't want to interview for audit. I want to interview for cybersecurity. And he's like, why? And I'm like, this sounds really cool. I feel like this is going to be the future in the next 10 years. So maybe this will make my job recession proof. And he's like, you know nothing about cybersecurity. And why do you want to interview? I'm like, that's my problem. If I don't get the job, it's on me, right? I can interview somewhere else. But if I want to interview with you, I want to interview for cybersecurity. And they were like, okay, fine, you interview. And so I know my interview was in 2 weeks, and I did not sleep for 2 weeks. I was reading up on concepts because I had no clue, absolutely no clue what cybersecurity was. And somehow I nailed the interview. But that was just the beginning, right? Like getting into cybersecurity was even tougher.
Yeah.
Like the first year, I had no idea what people were talking about, like absolutely zero idea. So like someone would say attack or someone would say phishing, and I'm like, phishing as in
Oh
FISHING, or
God.
what are
Okay.
you talking about? So I would have to Google everything, look up, read up, and like struggle the first year, but it worked out fine. Like I did become a subject matter expert in 2 years. I've been in cybersecurity for 10 years now, but it was a chance, and it was more about someone else taking, like seeing the potential and taking a chance on me as well.
And Shraddha, at any point of time while you were exploring all these complex terms of cybersecurity, did you feel, okay, I have been landed at the wrong place?
Oh, every
Cybersecurity is
single day.
something which is not my cup of tea.
Every single day. I'm like, what did I do? Oh my God, I was really good at accounting. I was like a topper and stuff. And I'm like, I did really well in university. And what am I doing here? This is so stupid of me. But it paid off. Like, I think failing was not an option at that point. And sometimes it's, it's weird. I always tell a few of my mentees, like, hey, sometimes failing is not an option. I didn't have that option at that point. I'm like,
Yeah.
I took this risk. I need to do it. I am going to do it. And it was the perseverance that, pushed me through the tough times in the initial years.
Yeah. I mean, for Shraddha, so for someone who is very new to the industry, cybersecurity looks like a very complex field to enter with so many disciplines, so many domains. So, can you also help for our listeners to break down the industry and help understand what exactly cybersecurity is? And in a very broad level, if you can highlight what are a few of the domains and verticals there.
So cybersecurity has multiple domains, right? Like we all know, there is vulnerability management, identity access management, governance, risk and compliance, GRC, product security, CCERT, PCERT, offensive defensive security. So when you talk about cybersecurity, you feel like, oh, I need to know all of these. And we watch shows like Mr. Robot and whatnot, and we feel like, okay, cybersecurity means sitting at a screen looking at a code and just hacking into. It's not that. There is a lot more to cybersecurity than what we see in movies, right? I don't know how to hack. I don't think I'm ever going to hack into anyone's computer or anything. So that's not cybersecurity. So you need to look at different fields, right? Like there are non-technical fields, like governance, risk, and compliance is a semi-technical field that helps you get, an overview of every single field into cybersecurity. So working in something like that, writing cybersecurity policies and or working in audits that lets you understand like how technology works and stuff like that. That's an initial phase to get into cybersecurity. For someone like me, right, who has accounting knowledge, if you're an engineer, you already have a step, like you've already taken the first step, right? So then you can start entering different aspects of cybersecurity and try exploring those as well. It is a technical field. I will not say it's not a technical field. Like I have my boss, who's like a CISO, is super technical. He understands every single aspect. And you can never slack in cybersecurity because, like they say, an attacker has to be right once, but you have to be right every single time. So you always have to be on top of what's happening in the field. What are the new bugs? What are the new vulnerabilities? What are like attackers doing? What are different countries trying to do to get into your company? So you always have to keep yourself updated. There is not, if you slack for like, let's say 2 months where you're not reading up on what's happening and what the world is doing, then you're going to lose your advantage of or you're going to lose whatever knowledge you've built the last few years.
No, that's absolutely true, Shraddha. Like the cybersecurity market, it's so evolving. You have been in the industry from the past 10 years, and I'm sure you must have observed a lot of trends in this industry. the way industry has shaped up. And currently, it's a huge market. I think it's more than $150 billion industry currently. So, what are some trends and challenges which you saw within the span of 10 years in the cybersecurity? I mean, would love to hear some insights from your end.
I mean, everything has changed, right? So when I started my career, people spoke about how you should have 16 character passwords, or I don't know, maybe at that point it was 12 character passwords that you should change every 90 days. Then
Yeah.
it to 16 character passwords. Now it's passkeys. I don't know if you've started using the Google passkeys. It's excellent. Passkeys is
Yeah.
going to be the future of identity. You won't need a password anymore, right? So now you don't have to teach anyone, or you don't have to teach your kids what passwords are. So
Yeah.
that's a new aspect. The biggest thing that everyone is talking about right now is generative AI, right? So let's say I have ChatGPT and I copy my company's source code into ChatGPT. Now some other company has my source code. So then how am I keeping my company secure? That's the biggest challenge, right? Like the first step is, yeah, okay, let's, block ChatGPT on our computer, company laptops. But that's not the solution, right? Because
Yeah.
you're going to still find a way to put your source code in there. So you want productivity. That's the theme of the market right now. Every productivity, and you want your engineers to be successful, but you also want to keep your company and your IP like secure, right? So now what are you going to do? So that is the biggest challenge I'm seeing right now. I think every single company is talking about solving that problem, and how do you work with ChatGPT. Same at Palo Alto, we are trying to figure out a solution to this problem, and I don't know how we're going to do it. Like, yeah, having AI within your products is one part, but securing a company from AI is even a bigger and a tougher challenge that I
Yeah.
see.
But Shraddha, so with advancing technologies, I see that it also increases the vulnerability to the whole system. So what is your mantra while building out products where you have to make sure that you are technically advanced? At the same time, security is never compromised because you work in the cybersecurity space. So how do you deal with those situations?
I mean, you can never be secure enough. Like, it's about understanding the risk, right? Like, whatever you're building or whatever you're doing within security, there's always a risk to it. You need to understand the risk. You need to understand the likelihood of that risk and the damage that's going to be caused if that likelihood comes true. And that's how you make your decision. It's like you never have unlimited resources, right? I want a Porsche and I want like a mansion and I don't know what else, but you'll never have those resources. So it's similar, right? You'll never have everything. You have to understand the risk and the likelihood of that risk. If the risk is high and the likelihood is high, then you need to solve it. But if the risk is low and the likelihood is low, then it's okay, fine. We can figure it out. We have time to solve this problem later on.
And Shraddha, while you were talking about this Chat GPT thing, now artificial intelligence, machine learning is growing very rapidly. Almost every industry is being affected either positively or negatively by AI/ML. You talked about some challenges which companies are facing because of GPT and how firms like Palo Alto Networks is working on them. But what do you think is the future of cybersecurity with AI/ML? In any way, can AI/ML help you in improving the cybersecurity by identifying threats? If yes, would love to know more about that.
Oh, definitely. Right. Like, so let's say cybersecurity, right? Disaster recovery, cybersecurity, anything like detection and response. We have so much data that comes in from all the scans and everything we do. But most of the times you don't know what to do with that data, right? So now with AI, you have a way of analyzing what you can do with this data, how you can use it rightly, and what are the next steps you can take. So you can actually get ahead of the curve by using AI ML correctly. I think most companies are now trying to build AI into their products. I haven't actually seen many of them do it right. And I think it's pretty early on in the AI revolution to say what they're doing. We are doing a lot of things in AI ML as well. And we have a pretty solid AI ML like solution within my company as well that has been around for years. But now with Chat GPT getting so popular, or GPT-4 getting so popular, I think everyone wants to do more and more of AI and ML and have products. To your question about will it help cybersecurity industry? Definitely. I'm actually looking forward to a world where we can get things done faster, get ahead of all the issues faster, and resolve things faster with AI ML.
Yeah. So so before jumping into product management techniques of how Shraddha builds products, this is the last question from my side in cybersecurity, particularly because in this industry there's a lot of myth around people that this is how industry works or this is how cyber attacks happens. So we would also love to listen some of the misconceptions which you regularly come across in your work environment, and how do you address those myths?
I mean, if you work for a security company, you don't see those misconceptions that often.
Okay.
But yeah, don't watch TV and think that this is how cybersecurity works. I think that is the biggest thing I've seen. Listen to actual security podcasts. Like there is one called Risky Business. I listen to it. Like I don't miss a single episode. It's excellent. It actually gives me a very good view of what's happening in the security market. Biggest misconception, like I said before, right? People think all cybersecurity folks sit and hack. Everyone has to be technical. We have like 5 screens here, and I don't know what I'm doing on them. That's not the truth. It's not that. You don't have to be super technical. You can learn along the way as you get into cybersecurity, and it's just about building that knowledge and trying to learn more.
Thanks, Shraddha, for sharing many insights about cybersecurity domain. Now, shifting gears to product management and how aspiring product managers can learn about cybersecurity. Now, cybersecurity is a constantly evolving field with new threats emerging all the time. So, something which we are really interested to know is how do you stay ahead of the curve and ensure that all your products are equipped to handle the latest security challenges which are emerging in this era?
I don't think you can ever be on top of every cybersecurity challenge that's happening, right? That's why we have day zero and day one and day two, right? So you have to be aware of what's day zero, day one, what is coming in the market. And when you build it, you have to build something that's resilient, right? Like every product needs to have that fortitude where, just not anyone and anything can get into cybersecurity product. I think the biggest difference between building like a very generic product was like generic as in let's say social media, a fitness app, right? Versus a cybersecurity product. If your social media app or your fitness app gets hacked or someone gets into it, it's a big deal, but it's not that big of a deal. But if you build a security product and someone gets into it, at the end of your career, that's the end of your product, the company as well, right? So you have to build something that has fortitude, and you need to be on top of trends. Like there are like I said, Risky Business, Curbs on Security. There are multiple blogs. Like try to read them, see what's happening, see what like industry experts think about all the newer vulnerabilities are about. Like at Palo Alto, we have a very strong red team, and they try to like get into every product that we have and see what are the weakest links there, and then patch them up. So having like that insider offensive defensive security is also very critical, so you can get ahead of it.
But Shraddha, like something which I was always intrigued was like I'm currently interning with a firm which is also into cybersecurity, and during my first few weeks, I was being tasked to understand this domain in detail. So though I was provided with a lot of resources, but still because I was very new into this domain, it felt a little tricky to understand all these terms about cybersecurity. At that point of time, I felt if I would have maybe recorded this podcast earlier, I would have Shraddha share all these kind of amazing resources. But yes, if in terms of resources for someone who has just entered this domain or someone who wants to interview for a cybersecurity company, what are some few insights which you would like to share with them in terms of resources to follow, blogs, or any other person?
I think first is understanding the domain, right? Like for cybersecurity, I think the biggest thing is pick a domain. You can't know everything at the same time, right? So if you choose identity it is. If you choose something like vulnerability management, that's what it is. And then look at all the products in the industry. Look at like all the blogs like Curbs on Security, or listen to podcasts, or there are multiple newsletters that I can't think of. I'll come to it in a minute, but you can read about them, and then just continuously keep building your knowledge. That's the key to it. Like if you want to get into cybersecurity, pick a domain. That's the first thing you need to do. Pick a domain. You can't say I'm going to do everything about everything. And keep learning on it. Build your knowledge. It's like building blocks. And once you learn enough about that domain, you can start getting into other domains. Don't say like I want to do cloud security. Cloud security is vast. You need to know different things within cloud security to see what you want to work on before jumping into security. And it takes time to figure out what you want to do. I have changed my domains multiple times. multiple times. So I did application security at Deloitte. I did governance, risk, and compliance at Salesforce first. Then I did identity access management, and now I'm doing cloud security and network security. So it's multiple domains. You have to keep switching, but you have to build your depth in one domain before jumping to the other.
Yeah. I mean, to understand cybersecurity itself is a huge challenge. I would say there's so many things you need to understand to figure out where you want to start with. But let's also help our listeners understand about your experience building products, Shraddha. So if you can take some example in from your past where you started with figuring out what needs to be built, then you figured out how it will be built, and if you can share the entire journey of building that product, and also if you can share some of the considerations which you kept in your mind while building those products in terms of if the product needs to be built for X industries, what are the special considerations which I need to take into account?
So let me talk about my first product that we built at Salesforce, because it was like something that we built from scratch. It was for governance, risk, and compliance. So it's a GRC product that we built for Salesforce. What happened is I was hired for a different role. I was hired as a GRC operations person, and it was a very like cumbersome, time-consuming, repetitive task. And I'm like, okay, this is not how it should be. There should probably be some product or some tool that does this for us, right? So I started researching a little bit into what would go into building a product, and this was my first product part-time, right? So I started talking to my customers, who I thought were customers, about, hey, how would this make your job easier? This is like very time consuming and it's frustrating. There is no like change management. Like essentially we were doing everything in Google Sheets, and that's not how something should be done, right? So I'm like, okay, if we build a tool, what would you like to see? And I started just talking to my customers. And second thing I did was I just sat with them. I'm like, hey, when you do your work tomorrow, can I just sit with you and see what you're doing, like 2 hours? And I did that with like 5 or 6 of my like co-workers there. I would just sit with them and watch them do their work. And I realized like what were the biggest pitfalls, what were the places where you made most mistakes and stuff like that. And I didn't have any budget for building a product. So me and my then another coworker, who then became my boss, we started building this product in our free time in the evening. So every morning or evening, we would sit and start building this. He had some coding experience, me none, but we would just watch videos of how development worked, and we started building an MVP. And then eventually we got a budget, and we got like $70,000 or something like that. It was the first time we got to build this product, and we built it like the MVP, and we made a lot of mistakes along the way, right? Like you are building your first product, you don't know everything about what you need to build, and that's the beauty of building a product from scratch, right? You get something that's built by someone, it's easier to find flaws and build on top of it, or it's easier to add features. But when you're building something from scratch without architect or someone like that, you need to think of so many things that you sometimes miss. And that's how I became a product manager. Like we got out into product management after that and stuff like that. But a few things to keep in mind: customer is the king. Like try to understand what your customer's pain is. Like get to the nerve of their pain, right? If you don't understand their pain, you're not going to be able to solve it. Don't try to solve everything at the same time. Pick one problem, solve, move to the next one. If you try to solve everything at the same time, it makes it really complex, right? Because you won't know what you're actually solving, and it causes a lot of trouble. Making your customers happy, it's easy and it's difficult, right? Like especially in case of enterprise products, like if you make a mistake, you're not losing, I don't know, $5 subscription or something like that. You're losing millions of dollars. So have a constant connect with your customers. Like make sure they're a part of your UAT. Like you'll always have those customers who would want to test and be with you, right? So make them a part of your journey so you can get feedback early on. The earlier you get feedback, the earlier you fail, the better it is for you. The later you fail, then the more difficult it is to come back and correct things from scratch. And we have seen a lot of products, right? Any successful product, you'll see the same culture within those teams where they try to promote failing fast. Like make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, right? Don't spend your time proving how you were right, or don't try to spend your time like showing that this was the right decision. It's okay, make a mistake, move on and correct it and move on. So those are the few things. But I would say biggest thing is understanding your customers, right? Like understanding customers, their pains, try to solve their pains, and that will help you the most with building
Yeah.
successful products.
Yeah.
Also, any particular frameworks which you would suggest to our listeners while prioritizing the task or doing user research, or
I
any
am
part?
not a big fan of frameworks. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I read a whole bunch of product books. I saw a whole bunch of frameworks, and I try to modify, my mechanisms based on what I'm listening from the customers. Because frameworks, it's not a one framework fits all
Yeah.
situation, right? So I try to mix and merge my frameworks based on what I'm doing at that point. But what are your favorite frameworks? I would like to know that.
Like
I,
I personally fall in the very same bracket. For product management interviews, we learn so many frameworks, RISE framework, XYZ. But from my previous experiences leading products or building products on my own, I never actually used any framework. And that is something which I usually ask to all the speakers on a podcast. That is it really for the interviews, or you usually use these frameworks on a day-to-day basis at your work?
I don't even use frameworks for my interviews. I
I
mean, it
mean, it
helps you
it
build a path, like a way of thinking. But other than that, I don't think I use it.
exactly. So it gives you a baseline to start having a thought process around the whole process. And once you know, okay, so the idea of the framework is not to get the output, is what I always think of. It's basically to give you a kickstart. So now you know this is the baseline I can start with. And on top of it, the situation will obviously demand where you need to head towards.
Correct. Like, imagine, right? Me asking you, like, hey, Rahul, how are you going to frame this podcast? And do you go like, what are the 5 P's of this?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't
No,
happen like
yeah.
that, right? You think differently. It depends on who you're interviewing. It depends on what situation it is, what field they are in. It's always going to change.
Yeah, that's true.
To that. And
Frameworks are good for interviews. It's also good. It's a good way of training your mind to think in
Yeah.
a certain way, but you don't need to use all aspects of that framework, right? Like you need to know, okay, what's our competition and what are we trying to target, and then you can go ahead with other parts of it.
Yeah, but
exactly.
for someone who is new to the product management industry, for example, when you entered into the product space, I'm sure these frameworks gave you a thought process of, okay, this is how people in the domain thinks. Because I'm sure, like finance industry, the thought process was entirely different while you're working for accounting. Entering to product, your mind has to change in a way how it's trained and how it will work now. So at that point, maybe the frameworks might be useful.
Not too much. Like I haven't even had a single boss who has used frameworks in their entire
Okay.
at least when I was working with them. It's mostly that critical thinking and structural thinking that you use, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like when we say let's pick 3 C's, right? You know your competition, you're always going to assess your competition. So that's a way of thinking. I don't think
Yeah.
that's framework, that's your mindset.
That's it.
If you're
Yeah.
always going to think about your competition, that's you're not using a framework at that point. Yeah, you could put it as a framework, but there are critical things you always need to consider while doing your work, and you could call it a framework or no.
Yeah.
You could build your own framework and call it your own framework, but I think those are buzzwords, and in the end I think it's your critical thinking and the way you structure things is what matters.
That's very
Yeah.
true. Yeah. And Shraddha, like while you were explaining that complete product development process, you've emphasized on understanding customer problems really well. Now, as per my knowledge in cybersecurity, there are so many stakeholders: developers, DevOps, SecOps, chief information security officers, to all the CXOs who are an integral part of the system. So, how is it challenging to understand the needs of all these different stakeholders? And what are some tips which you would like to share with the audience who are in this domain to better understand the customer problem and empathize with them?
So your customers, your stakeholders, and your users are always going to be different, right? Like,
Yeah.
so when you say customer, you just focus on the customer, right? Your stakeholders, yes, like, yeah, my CISO is going to be critical to me. Like every single stakeholder is extremely important in this phase, but it's about selling your idea, right? At any point, you're selling something. So if you know you're doing the right thing, which will help your customer, then you can sell it to your stakeholders. But if you don't know what your customer wants, then how are you going to sell it to your stakeholders, right? So I think that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, there is always going to be expectations, and sometimes leadership is what that drives a product roadmap. And in that case, it's also a negotiation and give and take, where you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we can do this because this is a constant task from my customer, but XYZ is not. And at that point, you need to probably negotiate and see what you can give and take. It's always a give and take, right? You're not going to just take or give.
So that.
So, Shraddha, what are three things which excites you the most about cybersecurity space and how the future looks like there?
Oh, that's a great question. So one is like I feel fulfilled, right? It's very fulfilling because you feel like you're saving something every day, right? You feel like, okay, I'm protecting my company, I'm protecting my product, I'm protecting whatever, like whoever's using it, right? Second, like it, like other than the fulfillment, it's a fast moving job. So there is no same day. You never get bored.
Yeah.
You always have something new to learn. You always have something new to do. And three, I think it gives me a lot of hope that, you know, I can leave the world a better place than how I found it by privacy and security and all these things. Like the problems that we had as kids growing up, the kids today don't have the same problem,
Yeah.
right? You can help with cyberbullying. You can help with like teaching children how to make things secure and stuff like that. Even my neighborhood kids, like when I meet them, I'm like, hey, so what's your password to your account? And they'll be like, oh, my password is pink 123, and I'm like, no, you're not supposed to tell it. And I think it gives me a lot of hope that I can make the world a better place than how I found it.
Absolutely.
And three things which you think needs to be improved currently in the whole process in the cybersecurity.
In the whole industry?
I mean, in general, where you're working, so you can be specific to the domain you're working on, or in general.
So right now I'm working with multiple domains, right? But I think as an industry, we can all do one biggest problem is like there's a lack of cyber talent, right? We don't have enough cybersecurity professionals. And I'm talking to, I realize it's mostly because there is a lot of apprehension about entering cybersecurity.
Yeah.
That, you need to be technical and all that stuff. So lack of cybersecurity talent results in a lot of like fires and trying to figure out things. Teams are very lean, results in burnout and all that thing. So my biggest hope is hopefully we can start, having more talent and start educating people. There are a lot of programs where you can start educating kids and stuff. Like I think even a Girl Scout now has a cybersecurity badge where you can go teach them. So I think the biggest problem is lack of talent, and lack of talent results in all other problems that we have within cybersecurity.
Yeah. I mean, I was going through one of the stats and it said there are close to 3.5 million open cybersecurity jobs in the market in 2023.
Even the government's trying to hire cybersecurity professionals and they are not able to find professionals.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. Like when we have openings, like in every single company that I've worked, like we don't get that many applications. And if you look at minorities, like if you look at women or if you look at like different minorities, you even get lesser of those applications.
Yeah.
And that's very sad, actually.
So that. Okay, thank you so much, Shraddha, for sharing all these wonderful insights with our listeners. I'm sure this has been really great session learning about product management and cybersecurity. Now, before we end our podcast, what are some tips, insights, resources which you would like to share with our listeners to learn more about product management or cybersecurity?
Interesting. So I read a lot. I wish I could give the same time I did a couple of years ago, but I think until last year I had read at least 100 pages a day. At least 100 pages.
Wow.
So that used to be my goal. But some newsletters that I like are Lenny's newsletter, Shreyas Doshi. There is Deb Lu, who I think is the CEO of Ancestry, and she sends a newsletter which I absolutely love. She her last newsletter was having like an activator person, like how do you get started on things and how do you keep the fire on, stuff like that. Books, I read a lot of books, lean product inspired, like the standard like cybersecurity books. From a product management resource perspective, right? Like there are a lot of interview resources. Like if you're looking to interview, try to have people review your resume. There is also Reddit subreddit called Product Management, which is pretty interesting. I like reading at it. There is a newsletter called Daily Product Prep. So earlier in my career, when I was trying to interview, I would get like, you get daily emails and it'll have questions like, how would you solve XYZ problem? It's simple product management question. And then, through your day, you keep thinking about it, mulling over the question and, try to find a solution. You always don't end up like finding a solution, but it helps you build that mindset and train your mind on that one. Product Hunt is another good thing. So Product Hunt, I don't know if you know Product Hunt, like see all the new products. So I like looking at Product Hunt. There are a lot of cybersecurity products that come up on Product Hunt. So I look at those and I try to see what's happening and what new products are. And then for cybersecurity, there are a lot of resources right now. So Women in Security, and there are a lot of newsletters and comment that I go through regularly. So far, or at least for the last few months, I've been obsessed over risky business, and I know a lot of readers listen to it. So that's a good avenue as well to learn more about products or what's happening in the cybersecurity world. And then there are a whole bunch of certifications if you want to do CISSP, CCSP, CISA, CISM, I don't know. So a whole bunch of certifications.
And with respect to the certification, Shraddha, do you think as a product manager, doing a certification adds value to your work in terms of the quality which you are able to put in with developers and engineers?
I am a wrong person to ask this question to, like the worst person. Like I'm using my product manager books as my, my certification books as my laptop stand right now. So I have bought like CISSP, CCSP, all these books. I've read them like multiple times, but I've never gotten to giving a certification. So I don't have a single security certification, and I know it's on my list forever. So maybe next year I'll have one, or maybe not. Mostly not. But it does help early on in your career. Having those certifications helps a lot, because when I interview people who are fresh out of college, right, and if they have cybersecurity certification, it gives me a very positive impression of that person. It shows drive, it shows your willingness to learn new things, and the willingness to go the extra mile. Later on in your career, I'm not sure if it helps as much as it should. But yes, certifications early on in your career, if you're trying to get into product management or cybersecurity, definitely will help. It'll also help you learn a lot, right?
Yeah.
Things that the terms that you don't know, or the terms that you need to Google, you won't have to do that anymore, because there is a book that actually talks about it and trains you on.
Yeah. Well, Shraddha, thank you so much for being so candid and sharing all those amazing insights. This officially brings us to the end of today's episode. Hope our listeners have got to learn something new from the episode, and our discussion has helped them generate some insights about cybersecurity. Stay tuned for more such exciting episodes. Thank you so much for tuning into Product Unfiltered.
Thank you so much for having me here. I had a lot of fun today.